Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. My guest this episode is Jason. He runs a very popular YouTube channel called 161 River Avenue, an address you might be familiar with, and he's here to join us now to talk some Yankee baseball. Hey Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Now people can follow you on Instagram. You're a diehard Yankee fan, 447, but of course, you got a great YouTube channel, 161 River Ave, right here, River Ave. With live streaming as well as almost pretty much daily updates on the Yankees and baseball in general, but very specific towards the Yankees. So again, it's a pleasure to have you on.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for, I like to have you on my channel as well. So, and it's, again, yeah, it's mostly Yankees, like you said. And we do breaking news. I'll actually be going live the day of the trade deadline, so we can get people live feed and what's going on, live action. So that'll be a lot of fun. But I try to make it as mostly fan interactive and as possible. So it's made by the fan for the fan.
Yeah, and I got a pretty big subscribers, so like over 12,000 subscribers. Like, how are we able to grow your audience?
Honestly, I mean, it's been a while, but consistent uploads, being honest, being genuine with it. And one of my rules with them is don't put breaking news if it's not breaking news. You know what I mean? So you got to be able to back stuff up with supporting articles. And I think that's important because it helps your credibility too. But mostly being consistent and just being genuine, being who you are. And, make it enjoyable for your followers. That's kind of the way I look at it.
And was there anything specific that's motivated you to start it? I'm assuming you were a Yankee fan your whole life, but was it something that was like, hey, I want to start a channel. I want to start doing these videos?
Yeah, I mean, kind of leaving corporate America. And it's something that I'm passionate about. And I talk about all the time. My wife's not a Yankee fan, so I don't have anybody to talk about it in my house. So I wanted to start a channel. And I honestly didn't expect it to get this big so quickly. But there is a pretty big following in the Yankee fan world. So, and it's nice to have, to learn from different perspectives and share different perspectives. And I think one of the things that helps it grow is the people that contribute to it, right? The viewers, the people that give their own opinions and perspectives. To me, an open dialogue makes the channel better rather than people just listening to me tell me I'm right and all that stuff. So I think it's important to get everybody's perspective because it's a huge community, as you know, the Yankee fan community. So that's kind of the way I wanted to do it. And I want to continue growing it to be hopefully one of the best, Yankee YouTube channels out there.
So look at this team, obviously, I was joking around with you the other day and I reached out, like, there's not much to complain about, but of course, we'll find things. And I guess the number one is this whole situation with Gallo. We're kind of waiting for him to turn it around a little bit, but it's just like the batting average is really getting bad. And even you look at other options, like, if Hicks played better, maybe, Hicks could get some more playing time, but he's not even doing that much better. So it just seems like the two gaping holes are Gallo and Hicks in that way. Now, you can't have a perfect team, but you think Brian Cashman is going to look to upgrade with any of those two somehow? Or is this sort of like, hey, you know what? We're doing great. We'll just ride and die with those guys. And we can't have a perfect left field. Or, not every team can have a perfect left field situation.
The way I look at it is I think Brian Cashman has to make a couple of important decisions, right? Number one is either play the kids like Andujar and Florial. And if you're not going to play them, trade them for players that you will play. Right, because you're clearly not getting what you need out of Gallo and Hicks, right? And it's unfortunate, but it's true. And so it's I think it's a reality that they need to face. And who are they going to bring in if they do make a trade that would be the right fit? I would say that the best player is not always the best fit, right? And the best fit for a team that has kind of great chemistry is important. So we've talked about Andrew Benintendi and Ian Happ, talked about Brian Reynolds. What are they exactly looking for, right? And one of the things about Cashman is he never tells you anything. He never tells you what they're looking for, what they need. He just goes out and gets it and makes moves that nobody's thinking about, like Clay Holmes and Jose Trevino. So I do expect them to probably move Gallo because contractually it's easier to move. Hicks has 3 more years of $10 million per. And in hindsight, it looks like a reasonable contract, but his production is not supporting that right now. So if he was producing normally or decent production, his contract would look like a steal and would be easier to trade. But unfortunately, that's not happening, right? So I do expect them to make some type of move. But in combining that in, you have these guys, Andujar and Florial, who are very productive at AAA. And Andujar has been productive at the major league level. Not so much Florial, but they've played well enough to justify giving them a little bit of time up here, in my opinion. And if you're going to give them time, or you can send them up now, and even if you sit Gallo or Hicks for a little while, let them work things out or let them work with the hitting coach. Play these kids because I don't think, like Florial getting the 27th, Andujar getting the 27th man in the doubleheader. To me, I consider that garbage time because that's like once every month. And it's it's very hard to be productive at the major league level if you're hardly ever playing. So, and again, this is not like high school baseball. This is major league. You're hitting great pitchers every game. So it's really hard if you're not getting some kind of consistent playing time to be productive. So I think if they're going to play Andujar, keep him up here for a little while. If you're going to play Florial, keep him up here for a little while. Let them justify just keeping them up here. And if they don't, then you can trade them, or at the very least, keep them up here while you're looking for a trade. It gives you more flexibility, and you're getting more production from the positions that you're not getting production from right now. So, and I understand it's tough because those other guys are locked into big contracts, and it's very unpopular to sit guys like that. I get that, but at the end of the day, the Astros are going to get better. They're going to make additions, right? So are the Rays and the Dodgers and some of the teams that we're going to be most competitive with, they're going to make additions. So the Yankees have to figure out a way to hang with them. Like right now, as you saw with the Astros series, their offense struggled with their good pitching against their good pitching. So we need some contact hitting. And personally, Brian Reynolds seems to be the most better fit, in my opinion, than everybody. Like Juan Soto is the guy to shoot for but he's very unrealistic. He's probably not going to be moved, and Brian Reynolds will cost a lot of money, but he solves the leadoff hitting problem, in my opinion. He's a switch hitter. He's heating up. He's got 3.5 years of control. If he's not a free agent until 2026, that's the type of controllable player that's perfect here. And again, if you put him at the top of the lineup, it makes it easier, in my opinion, to kind of set the rest of the lineup, because there's no consistency in the top two hitters in the order with the Yankees. It's kind of rotating. So I think with that semblance of consistency at the top, and yes, it will cost Jason Dominguez and some other guys, but it would be worth. I think it would be worth the investment, if that makes sense.
It does, and I think that the Yankees are lacking a leadoff hitter. Like I'm not a fan when Boone bats Judge or like Rizzo first. I mean, I know it really doesn't matter once you go the lineup one time, but yeah. But I guess and also the failures, or I guess the poor play of Hicks and Gallo has forced them to play Judge and center a lot more than I think they want to. And I think that's just out of discourse. They're not getting production out of center field. So over the long term, I think they'd rather have Judge playing in right. I'd rather see Stanton DH. But again, this because Gallo and Hicks have been struggling. It's almost been forcing Boone to put a Judge out in center. So at some point they do have to solve the situation, because all Gallo really gives you is a glove at this point. That's it.
Yeah, and playing out of position at some point could come back to bite them. Like I worry about playing Judge too much in center field, but his durability, right? And I do think playing Stanton a few times here and there helps his productivity. I think it keeps him better engaged in terms of his hitting on the hitting side. So I would be rotating Stanton and Judge, DH and right field. And then you put somebody in. So I keep going back to Brian Reynolds because he's the perfect fit to me in center field. And then you can easily position these guys otherwise, man. Because I think Judge hitting second or third would be better than him hitting first. He gets more RBI opportunities, right? So does Stanton, so does Rizzo, so do these other guys. And you have a guy with speed at the top, a guy like Brian Reynolds who steals bases and does these other things, puts them in a table setting position where you can even bat DJ second, who's their best contact hitter, and then you bat Judge third, and you kind of tile it down. So it closes the holes at the bottom and adds some pieces at the top. It makes it a more balanced and complete offense, and at least in my opinion. And again, the switch hitter in Brian Reynolds makes for better lineups, more creative lineups, and gives pitchers more problems on the opposing side. So, but you're right. You make a good point about Judge and, playing out of position too much. And again, he's not a leadoff hitter. Neither is Rizzo. I love what Judge is doing, but we got to protect him, especially if they're going to keep him or extend him after this year. They're going to have to protect him. They're going to keep him healthy, right? So that's the other conundrum. That's the other situation. Do they do that, or do they get a guy like Reynolds and let Judge walk? Because again, the only two guys I would justify letting Judge watch would be Soto and Reynolds. It would make it a little bit more justifiable, and that would be a very unpopular decision, obviously, because he's the franchise player. But if you can get a guy to replace some kind of semblance of offensive production, a guy like Reynolds or a guy like Soto has to be the way. I don't think Benintendi or Ian Happ are going to move the needle enough to become that much of a difference maker to put them over the top. Because I do see the Astros getting somebody like Wilson Contreras, which will make a difference for them, right? I could see the Tampa Bay Rays getting somebody like Frankie Montez at the trade deadline could make a difference for them too. So who's going to really move the needle for the Yankees? And to me, Brian Reynolds is like kind of the ideal fit because he's not as expensive as Soto, but he's also more expensive, but better than Happ and Benintendi, if that makes sense. So what's your perspective on that? I want to know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, well, play devil's advocate a little bit. It's just funny that if you have in mind that you can have Judge for the long term, you wouldn't be playing him in center field as much. So I wonder if there's this little piece in like Boone and Cashman's mind that figure, hey, we're not going to have this guy, so let's just get the most out of him this year. But that's a little. I don't see that in that way. But I think it's with Judge, for example, as the season goes on, I think they are going to have to do said rotate him more in right field because they're not going to be able to continue that. And I just don't think I don't think they're going to make any big moves. Reynolds would be great for them, but there is something to be said about, team chemistry and so forth. And we don't know what goes on in that clubhouse. And, maybe we can't see it because we're not in there, but if you move Hicks or Gallo, maybe that has a negative effect, even though they're not producing on the field. But it could, we don't know these relationships in there. So I just think a situation where they're not going to really look to rock the boat. Again, it would be nice to get something like Reynolds, but I think they're kind of just going to ride and die with it and say, hey, look, we got to this point already. Maybe we'll pick up an arm in the bullpen, or maybe perhaps, they're going to probably need some help at the starters, just because, some people like Sebi, Tyone, Nestor Cortez aren't used to throwing a full season, a little bit of Montgomery. So they're going to bring up some players. You might see Clark Schmidt get some spot starts. We'll get some spot starts by JP Sears. Maybe bring up Devi Garcia a little bit. But overall, I don't think they're going to bring any big names into this fold. Because I just think, the train's going right now. And I don't think they're going to look to rock the boat.
So you bring up a good point too about chemistry. And again, that's one reason I also mentioned Reynolds, because he's known as a good teammate, as a good chemistry guy. And I think a guy like Soto, which would probably rock the boat a heck of a lot more than a Reynolds would. And so that's one reason I kind of I've been honed in on Reynolds for about a year now as a good fit. But you make a good point too. Like, who do they pivot to relief pitching? Do they pivot to starting? And again, Nestor Cortez and Severino, at the very least, those two are going to be on some kind of innings limits, because Nestor's never thrown more than 93 innings. He's already around 80 right now. So, and Severino hasn't had a full season since 2018. So those guys are going to be on some kind of cap, right? So you're going to need somebody like a Sears or Waldichuk if they give him a shot. I like to bring in somebody proven at the major league level at the very least, because it allows you to pivot at least a guy like Severino into a long relief role, or Cortez or something like that, just to keep those productive innings in there, especially if they're going for a World Series run. I mean, to me, a guy proven like a Luis Castillo would be probably a bigger or better bet than a JP Sears over a playoff. I'm not sure if JP Sears is ready for the playoffs yet, right? Or Ken Waldichuk. There, I like the way they're trending, but getting a more proven guy in a World Series year is probably, in my opinion at least, a better bet. But it could go either way, right? Or if they invest in a big arm, David Bednar in a bullpen or somebody like that, or David Robertson, or if they do a multiplayer trade like an Andy Benintendi and a Scott Barlow from the Royals, they kill two birds with one stone. They get the outfielder and a reliever at the same time. So there's a lot of different ways they can get it done. And you're right too. Like, what's crazy is when you think Brian Cashman's going to do nothing, he does a whole bunch. And when you think he's going to do a whole bunch, he does nothing. So it's the one thing that mystifies me about Cashman, frustrates me too, but it fascinates me about him too, because he's kind of total ninja GM, total ninja. So he's stealth to like the highest level, in my opinion. So could I see a Brian Reynolds? Yeah. I mean, will I? I don't, probably not. Right. I think he's personally the best fit. I'm probably thinking more along the lines of an Andrew Benintendi if they make an outfield move. Or if they don't, then an Estevan Florial or a Miguel Andujar, or even a Tim LaCastro to a degree with his speed and versatility. So they have some guys. It's just the point of where Cashman's going to pivot, because he will make a few moves, right? We just don't know the type of moves he's going to make. But and he knows too that they struggled with the Houston's pitching, and they've already acknowledged that they have to upgrade in the outfield offensively. Question is who they're going to go for. Is Andujar and Florial an upgrade over Happ and Benintendi? We don't know. Right. I think that's the $1 million question right now. Which way's Cashman going to pivot? And he's got a couple different avenues. And I think Brian Reynolds will probably be the guy to shock the world trade, where none of us are thinking it's going to happen, but it could, kind of thing. So that's kind of how I have it laid out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I just think any moves we made will be more on the pitching end of it than offense. But again, as I said, Cashman is like ninja. Like, last season, we heard the Gallo rumors, but we had heard nothing about Rizzo. So that was just totally off the radar with that. So again, is it possible? Yeah, and got to think also of this. Rizzo's definitely going to walk after this year. I mean, he signed a 2-year deal, but he has to opt out after the year. Well, the numbers he's putting up, he's going to get some big offers. So, now Cashman has to think, hey, do I make a move for first base, knowing that I'm probably not going to have Rizzo after this year as well. So again, that's something else that's floating around.
Yep, exactly. He's got several pending free agents. I mean, Judge, we know. Rizzo most likely, right? Because again, he's going to capitalize on this opt out. If he still plays, he's projected towards 40 home runs. So why would you not opt out, right? And go for a bigger deal? So I wouldn't hesitate adding a couple years to the back end of his contract either. So because he's been great here, been fantastic. But like, who's a reliable replacement is the other question for Anthony Rizzo. I mean, I can only think of something like Josh Bell, but is he an upgrade over Rizzo's been perfect here? Who would they get if Rizzo walks? I don't even know. I don't even know who's available. Or who would be a free agent at least at the first baseman level. So yeah, that's a good point too with the opt out with Rizzo. And I do think, probably the priority is to boost pitching and make some kind of tweak with hitting. But I mean, if in a perfect world, if they can add an outfielder, reliever, and a starter, that would be a great trade deadline to me. Which ones, I have no idea. But I would love like a Benintendi and a Barlow, a combo, right? Or to a more expensive degree, Brian Reynolds and a David Bednar. But that's going to cost a ton to do something like that. Or David Robertson and an Ian Happ. That would probably be the midline trade, right? In the middle. So those to me represent probably the 3 perfect trades for the Yankees. But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, the pitching, I do think they'll fortify. And again, I think the Astros are going to fortify. I think the Rays are going to fortify. Who else do we have to really worry about? I would Minnesota might fortify. Cleveland, because they're going for it too. So, and again, it's a crapshoot in the playoffs because you could have the best record in baseball and then go cold at the worst time, right? Or another team gets hot. It just happens that way. It's unfortunately, there's only so many like 72-win Chicago Bulls team where nobody's going to beat them. Like, you know what I mean? So it's tough in the playoffs. And again, it's a long season and they have to stay healthy. That's the other thing. So, which I hope they do.
Now, one of the good things about the season, it seemed like the Yankees finally slayed the Tampa Dragon, at least to this point. But the team you mentioned before, now Houston, I think clearly in the 5 games they played so far, I know Yankees won 2 of those games, but a little fluky because you had the Hicks 3-run home run in the 9th, which usually doesn't happen. And then you had the Judge walk off. Again, that was a game that Houston was leading. Normally it would win that game. So again, comes to October, do you think the Yankees could finally beat this Houston team?
And that's my worry. If let's see, and I think they're on kind of collision course to the ALCS, right? I would give Houston probably a slight advantage right now in that series. And I hate saying it as a Yankee fan, but this is where I think the Yankees need to kind of make some moderate upgrades. And it doesn't necessarily have to be monster upgrades, but some incremental improvements that I think could put them over the edge. And I think that's probably where Brian Cashman's calculus is, right? What kind of moves do we need to make? Because we know he hates overpaying for trades. He hates overpaying in free agency. So he tries to extract as much back as possible. So he is stingy, but he's also a brilliant tactical negotiator. Like, did anybody think Clay Holmes would be what he was? I never even heard of him before they traded Hoyt Park. And everybody's hair was on fire when they traded Hoyt Park because he was very popular. But look what we have now. Nobody heard of Jose Trevino, but my goodness, right? This is the magic that Cashman works, where he's looking for guys where nobody's even heard of or expecting. So I expect something like that to happen with Cashman. I expect him to probably make a move that we expect and make a move that we don't expect. And to what level, I'm not sure. But, it's stuff like that where I think those moves need to happen if it's going to put them over the Astros in my view. So what's your take? Do you think who has the edge right now in a 7-game series?
I would have to go to the Astros right now, just because again, in these 5 games, they've completely shown that they've set the pace pretty much in those 5 games. Again, I know the Yankees had a couple 3-run home runs in that opening game to come back, but again, in the playoffs, you're not going to get that. This is going to be tight pitching. It's basically going to be like the final game, that one game they had in Houston where, Severino got outpitched and they lost 2-1. That's probably, the games are going to be like that. And it just seems like the Yankees are just going to fall short, in those games. Again, unless something happens or finally they find a way to figure out Verlander, which they haven't been able to do in like 20 years. When he was with Detroit, now with the Astros, the guy just, they can never figure the guy out. So I would still have to give the advantage to Houston at this point.
And if I can add something to that, the overwhelming majority of their bullpen and rotation is right-handed. So I think a left-handed bat who can hit righties would be a good add for the Yankees if they want to neutralize to Astros a little bit. Like Benintendi can hit righties pretty well. So can Happ. So can Reynolds. Like, so somebody who can hit righties well would be a wise move for them rather than, adding somebody who can't. So that's probably the little maybe difference making statistic that could make a difference with the Yankees. So, because their bullpen's overwhelmingly righty. So somebody who can hit righties well would be a good idea. There's only so many times Aaron Judge can come off with a walk-off home run. He only bats once every 9 times. So we have to have someone else in there, right?
I think the only good news is that the Yankees, they got to some of their Stanek, they got to Presley a little bit. So maybe they plays in their head a little bit. I mean, they're professionals. I'm sure they could just take it out and go to the next game. I would say the only clear advantage is that at least the Yankees almost like, haha, we could get to your pen if we want to. So that'd be like the only edge the Yankees would have. But the starters, you get some like Christian Javier shutting the Yankees down for like one hitting them for 7 innings, stuff like that. Their starters have been better than our starters. But, again, the only clear thing is that our bullpen really hasn't blown anything to them yet. So we have that sort of edge with Holmes. I would say that's probably just about it.
They're the team that I worry about in the American League. I don't worry about any team in the National League as much as I do the Astros in the American League, unfortunately. So, I mean, the World Series to me right now is going to go through either Houston or the Bronx, right? And that's kind of the way I look at it. So they've got to do what they need to do to get better in a way that specifically targets neutralizing the Astros. So I don't think Tampa Bay is going to make it that far. I don't think Boston's going to make it that far, even though they're good enough to do it. It could happen. But Houston's the one that I think any deadline trade should be somewhat thought of as in a way of neutralizing them. How do we get past Houston? Because we have to in order to get to the World Series.
And I think it's important also to get the best record so we can have the home games, because I just feel uncomfortable in that Minute Maid Park. There's a few parks I hate playing in, Minute Maid Park, in Tampa and Boston. Like, even if you have a 10-run lead, I just never feel comfortable in those ballparks.
Yeah, and I don't want to play a one-game wild card with any of those teams away. Heck no.
Yeah.
Like we did last year, no thank you. So, yeah, no thank you. I agree with that 100%.
Now, again, also here in New York, Mets also having a really good season, getting DeGrom back soon, Scherzer back at some point. Well, now they had a little taste of interleague action at the end of this month. I mean, as a Yankee fan, do you enjoy those games? Because it's really like we can't win. If we win, well, yeah, the Yankees should win. But if we lose, like, haha, Mets won. It's like, do you look forward to those games, or there was this uncomfortable for you to watch?
They do make me nervous, and but not as much as Houston does right now. Houston's, they seemingly have our number. And generally the Mets usually have the Yankees number in Citi Field, and then vice versa. The Yankees have the Mets number in Yankee Stadium. So, but that said, this is a heck of a lot different Mets team than we've ever seen. So with Scherzer and DeGrom and all the other guys they've added, Starling Marte, Eduardo Escobar was playing like an all-star right now. Mark Canha, like they've gotten so many underrated people here, right? These underrated signings that Cohen is accomplished over the offseason that kind of adds an ingredient to the Mets mystique and just power that is kind of being underlooked or just not looked at or underappreciated, in my opinion, because everybody's like, oh my God, DeGrom and Scherzer. I get it. But look how many times they've won almost 80% of the time without them. So this team is that good.
All right. So to close it, actually, want to have a little fun. So the Yankees off to this great start. A lot of people comparing to the 98 Yankees. So I want to get you take position by position with the powerful technology of a Post-it.
Yeah, baby.
So I'm going to go position by position. And I want you to give me which team would have the edge, the 98 team or this 2022 team. So first we'll start at the catchers. So you got Jorge Posada and Girardi versus Trevino and Higgy. Who would you go with?
I'm going to go with the 98 team.
Now this one's tricky. First base, Tino or Rizzo?
Oh, man. Right now, probably Tino, depending on how Rizzo does in the playoffs. He's never been in the playoffs with the Yankees, really, but Tino was clutch. He came up big in a lot of different situations. So I got to give it to Tino right now because he was money for the Yankees in the postseason, but not by a lot.
All right, so now second base, now Chuck Knobloch, but this is the Chuck Knobloch, the good one before you got the throwing yips versus Gleyber Torres.
Knobloch, yeah.
Third base, we got Brocious versus Donaldson.
Brocious, yeah.
Jeter versus IKF.
Jeter, baby. Hall of Fame Jeter.
Left field, I guess we call a mix of Strawberry, Tim Raines, Chad Curtis versus Gallo and Hicks.
98 Strawberry, those guys.
So for this year, I'm going to put Judge in center. So Judge versus Bernie.
Judge.
Right field, O'Neill versus Stanton.
O'Neill. Not by much though, because Stanton's been phenomenal with the Yankees in the postseason. So just been unfortunately, he's been on and off because of his being healthy, not being healthy. But O'Neill was clutch for the Yankees for a decade, so I got to give that tenure. But it's not by a lot because Stanton's approaching that kind of level, I think, with that production. So.
All right, the starting rotation with what we got now: Cole, Nestor, and Sevy versus Cone, El Duque, Andy Pettit, David Wells.
I'm going to give this rotation a slight edge.
Interesting.
Yeah, this rotation, just because of upward kind of top level performance. But if we go into the postseason, I'm probably flipping it. But right now, I'm giving this rotation edge just because the overall performance is better.
The bullpen, which is Mariano and everyone versus Holmes and what we have now.
I'm going this bullpen. But in terms of one reliever, it's got to be Mariano. Just Mariano's supporting cast wasn't as robust right now as this bullpen is. If you gave Mariano this bullpen, I don't think they'd ever lose.
So according to you, I guess the 98 team wins 7-3. So there you go.
Yeah, about that. And I think if you played in the World Series, the 98 team would probably win 4-2, something like that, somewhere around there. It would be a good series. But the 98 team, it just had too much of everything, right? Even their backup players, guy went 25 home runs, Strawberry batting 300, Homer Bush batting 400 in the playoffs. Like they were everywhere. And they made the right man. That was Cashman's team too. Cashman made a lot of those moves. He brought in Chile. He brought in like Knobloch. He brought in, Brocious.
Brocious trade, and he was like an MVP.
Just it shows the progression of Cashman, and there's also his consistency over the last couple of years. And there's been times we've been critical of him, but his body of work over 25 years is pretty darn impressive. So, but I would give the 98 team. And again, you have 3 Hall of Famers on that team too, right? So there's a lot of guys on that team that were just at a higher level than this team is now. We have some future Hall of Famers, I think, on this team, but those guys are further along, which is another reason I kind of give them the edge. More experience, just more savvy, and kind of just a deeper team.
Totally agree. So, Jason, pleasure to speak with you, talking some Yankees. Again, people check out your YouTube channel. It's 161 River Avenue. Again, I also like to follow you on Instagram, Diehard Yankee Fan 447. Again, fun chat with you, and hopefully have you on again in the future.
Come on my channel as my guest. If you have time before the trade deadline, so we can give our trade deadline predictions.
I'm game.